Let's say right now you're making $100 an hour and like, I'm leaving money on the table. I should charge more. If you just double it to $200 per hour, your existing clients are going to head for the hills. They're going to be like, well, on Friday it was 100 an hour and on Monday it's 200. Like, what changed? Nothing. And that's existing customers. And then new customers, I sort of already alluded to, they're going to go around and talk to a bunch of people, get everybody's hourly rate, and pick the second cheapest one. So good luck with that.
Welcome to Smart Strategy for CPAs, where I help you work less and earn more. My name is Geraldine Carter. My guest today is Jonathan Stark. Jonathan is a former software developer who is on a mission to rid the world of hourly billing. He's the author of Hourly Billing is Nuts, the host of 2 podcasts, Ditching Hourly and The Business of Authority, and writes a daily newsletter on pricing for independent professionals. Jonathan, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
We're talking today about better ways for CPAs to price their services so that they can get out of the accounting rut. We'll get into different pricing strategies, the difference between value, price, and cost, selling outcomes instead of deliverables, and so on. But first, just to get everyone on the same page here, let's start with, at a high level, your top 4 or 5 reasons that billing by the hour is tragic.
Yes, okay. Yeah, I see it as a cancer on professional services. It prevents you from leveraging your expertise because if somebody buys an hour from you, it takes an hour for you to deliver it. And that's by far your main cost is your time. So, that artificially limits your income. It puts a ceiling on the number of dollars you can bring in a year. It's really hard to scale up. If you do scale up at all, the strategies are very limited. Add headcount and mark up their time. So you're basically getting a bunch of people who are mini me, not as good as you, that you're renting out by the hour and taking a margin. That's really hard to scale up, especially if that's not what you want to do and you're only doing it because you think that's the only path to growth. So that just creates bad bosses and angry people. And, if you want to build a giant firm, then fine, that's great. And you want to be a manager and a leader, then fine, that's great. Go ahead and do it. And if you want to build people up by the hour, I'm not going to chase you down. But to me, that's not the only path. So it limits your income. It's bad for the client relationship because you can get started before you even know what they really want to achieve. So you're just billing. This is really bad in the software space where it's like people don't spend the time upfront to really understand what the client's trying to achieve. So when they just start working, you don't find out until way late in the process that, wow, this isn't really going in a direction that's going to benefit us because no one talked about what's going to benefit them. So it allows you to get started working before you really know where you're going. It's like driving a cab without the person telling you where they want to go. You're just driving around. And you might be an amazing driver and you might be like hugging the curves and just like getting through every red light. But if you don't know where the person's trying to go, you're just wasting their money. If you got to the correct destination, it would be dumb luck. So that's another one. Another issue is that it misaligns the financial incentives between the buyer and seller. I mean, to put it bluntly, the longer it takes you to achieve something, the more money you make. And that's not what the client wants. The client wants it to cost less money and probably wants it done more quickly. I mean, that's just a bad, and I know everybody listening, they're honorable and they don't pad their timesheets and they do things as quickly as they can. But financial incentives matter. And if you don't have a financial incentive to get faster at what you do, then you're not going to get faster at what you do. You're not even going to think of things that would allow you to deliver a high quality of service in half the time. Why would you even think of that? Why would you invest in tools that would allow you to go more quickly? Why would you even buy a faster computer? It doesn't make any sense. What is the point of that investment? You should have again, in the software space, computer speed has a huge impact on how long it takes you to do things, similar to video editing and other things. Maybe not so much with CPAs, but why would you buy a faster machine? Why would you buy tools that would allow you to go more quickly if that investment is going to directly result in a loss of money? I could go on and on. Why would you do any professional development? What's the point? You're just going to get better. It punishes expertise. The better you get, the less you make. It's bonkers.
It is bonkers. And I would add a couple of my own. It's like going to the grocery store and buying 14 pounds of heirloom tomatoes for your pasta sauce, not knowing that the heirloom tomatoes are $8.99 a pound. And you get home and you don't get the grocery bill. You don't get the bill from the grocery store 3 weeks after you've made your pasta sauce. And you're like, if I would have known that the heirloom tomatoes were $8.99 a pound, I would have just gotten the aromas. They would have been fine. I was just making pasta sauce.
Yeah.
And then the other problem that I see about billing by the hour is that CPAs are just leaving truckloads of income on the table because there's so much more value to what they do than to what they're necessarily charging for. And yet it makes no sense at all to price at $2,000 or $750 an hour. People just can't compute that number.
Right. There's a certain limitation on an hourly rate. So that's a tacit assumption, is that if you say to somebody that your hourly rate is $2,000 an hour, they're just going to hang up the phone. They're not even going to get to the point where you say, but it's only going to take me 5 minutes. They'd just be like, no, it just sounds too dangerous. And I mean, from a marketing standpoint, if you're advertising your hourly rate, or it's easy to find your hourly rate, it allows them to compare you apples to apples. Theoretically, they believe that they're comparing you apples to apples against other people who have the same job title as you. So it incentivizes, or it encourages, a race to zero dynamic, because they're like, well, why should we hire you? There's someone who's cheaper. It's irrational, but they think someone who charges less per hour is automatically going to be cheaper. So it makes it really hard to, say double your hourly rate. Let's say right now you're making $100 an hour, and I'm leaving money on the table, I should charge more. If you just double it to $200 per hour, your existing clients are going to head for the hills. They're going to be like, well, on Friday it was 100 an hour, and on Monday it's 200. Like, what changed? Nothing. There's no added value. There's no conversation about value. You basically just doubled their price for no obvious reason. And that's existing customers. And then new customers, I sort of already alluded to, they're going to look at you and say, well, what's your hourly? They're going to go around and talk to a bunch of people, get everybody's hourly rate, and pick the second cheapest one. So good luck with that.
Right. So before we go any further, let's back up for just a minute. You mentioned a couple of times that you were in the software industry. So tell me how you became an expert on pricing, and why should we listen to you?
Yeah. So I've been, in 2003, I started at a dev shop. So it's like a boutique software development firm. Within a couple of years, I'd worked my way up to vice president. We had maybe 13 employees, 10 of which were developers. We billed them out at $150 an hour. Didn't matter who you got, it was $150 per hour. And it occurred to me at one point that we were losing money on our best developer, because we all knew who the best developer was. We were lucky to have him. He was a great developer, and we paid him around $100,000 a year. And he would just burn through projects so fast. He'd do them right the first time. There was not a lot of rework. He was blazing fast. So we were probably breaking even on him, maybe losing money. And then we had this junior developer who was basically not quite an intern, a little bit better than an intern, but really junior, who had a great bedside manner, kept his clients perfectly happy, and would take 4 or 5 times longer to do anything. And so we're making way more money off of this sort of lower tier resource, if you want to put it like that. And I just could not accept that. But it took me weeks to figure out what the problem was. That's the insidious nature of hourly billing, is you just don't question it. It's like water to fish. Like, you didn't decide, should I bill by the hour or some other way? You immediately, when you go solo, think, how much should I charge per hour? And it took me like weeks to figure out what the issue was. And then as soon as I identified that it was because we were trading time for money, instead of giving someone a price, the light bulb went on. And I was like, if that happened, if we gave a price, then instantly our best developer would also become our most profitable developer. And I could not unsee that. So I went solo, started my own solo consultancy, and just knocked it out of the park right away. I mean, even though I was stumbling my way into figuring it out, it still was a dramatic increase in income, and like double. But that's not even the important part. The important part is the quality of life, the quality of my relationships with my customers, 180-degree difference. It went from, I was managing 10 developers. So basically my whole day at the time was talking to clients about hours estimates, fighting about timesheets and like how much this should have cost this week. It was, well, it only took 1 hour last week, spending hours on the phone talking about hours.
Defending your invoices.
Right. I'm sure a lot of listeners have thought, had like a sort of high maintenance client where they've considered actually putting the conversations about hours on their hourly timesheet. Like, how insane is that? You know? So anyway, I could give you some more anecdotes if you want, but it became obvious to me that was the root problem. And then once I saw it, it was like everywhere.
So let's transition to helping our listeners shift in the direction of value based billing. And no doubt it's a difficult transition to make. For many, it's like a quantum leap. Can you give listeners a place to start, a place to begin thinking about how to shift out of billing by the hour into value based billing?
Yeah. And this is why I left the firm and didn't try and convert the firm, because it's hard to convert a firm. And I didn't know how to do it. If I had tried, I probably would have failed. And we had payroll to consider. I had no experience with it. I just had the idea. I had a revelation, but no process, no steps. 15 years later, or whatever, however many years later it is now, more than that, I've got a bunch of ways that you can do it. And so you've talked about value and value pricing. That's just one way. The big thing is to ditch hourly, to stop trading time for money. And there are a variety of ways you can do that, but you can't be selling your hours because there's no way to leverage it. There's just no feasible way to leverage it without adding giant head count. So if that's off the table and you want to stay boutique or solo, you have no options. So you have to stop trading time for money. How do you do that? Your internal systems probably are just infected with hourly billing assumptions at every turn. Like it was true with us. We had our estimation system was based on the concept of hours. Our entire sales interview process was based on the concept of figuring out hours. We had systems that we built that would feed hours into the invoicing, so that and ingest hours from developers, and I would chase that. It was everywhere. The assumption was baked in everywhere. So if you're in a situation like that, and if you have 5, 10 employees, you probably are, then it's going to be a process. It is going to be hard. And my advice is to do it in very small steps and get the experience, start to slowly get the experience of working on a project or working on an engagement where you're losing money every hour you work, and getting that sense, like feeling the shift from like, hey, I just made $150 to, hey, I just lost $150, and start to notice the gears that turn in your head when you're losing money by being inefficient. It changes your whole view. It changes the way you see the world. Certainly the way you see your business. All of a sudden you're going to say, wow, for this particular kind of project. So maybe one thing that I would recommend for CPAs is to look for a particular, usually a phase of an engagement with a client, like something, maybe it's a lot with software developers, it's usually one of the upfront phases before a project or before an implementation or before a support and maintenance contract. Upfront, there's some kind of strategic engagement where you're doing planning or architecture or some kind of strategic advice where it's very fixed scope. It's not the kind of thing that's gonna spiral out of control or turn into just hours and hours and hours of labor on your part. It's usually it'll be something like a few hours, maybe 5 to 10 hours spread out across the course of a couple of weeks, maybe a month, and create like a safe little fixed scope, relatively fixed scope service that you can present to the world as a product with a published price on your website, but then is delivered as a service like you're used to doing. So it's kind of like creating a repeatable, tiny project that you can sell as a productized service is what we would call it. So create a productized service out of probably some kind of initial engagement. You're already going to be comfortable with the delivery piece because you do it all the time. It's something that you do all the time and doesn't change that much from customer to customer scope-wise. And then just price that piece. And then that becomes an initial engagement for new clients, let's say. And once you start doing that, once you start selling those, your brain is just going to be like, wow, we could optimize this in so many ways. We could create so much efficiency to take this from, say, 10 hours over the course of a month down to 2 hours over the course of 2 weeks and charge as much or more because we're delivering the results more quickly. So that's a great first step, is to find something that you've done multiple times and doesn't really change scope that much, and pick a price for it that you'd be happy to receive, and start selling it as a productized service. So you can start to experience that feeling of losing money for every hour that you work.
So I'm thinking about compliance for CPAs because that tends to be something that they're already doing at a flat rate or a fixed fee. It's already, to a degree, a productized service.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to think about other examples that they're probably already doing or could be doing readily at the sort of beginning stages of working with clients. And what comes to mind for me is something like creating a dashboard for your clients and just having that be a standalone service where
Yep.
you could dig into their financials and pull out the key metrics and put those on a dashboard, or run some kind of diagnostic, or do some kind of profitability analysis that spits out a report, and that is the product and it's done.
Mm-hmm.
And I can imagine doing something like that 10 or 20 or 40 times, and you get increasingly better at it. You figure out how to get faster at it. You also come to understand how to make it more valuable to the client, both by what you include or how you communicate it, and so on and so forth. And increasing the value of it means you can increase the price, and you also get faster, so your margins on it go up.
Right.
So I'm just trying to interpret what you're thinking and translate it into concrete ideas that CPAs might be able to go, oh, they might be able to recognize and go, oh, okay, that's what he's talking about. I could totally do something like that.
Yeah, I can give you an example from my life. Like, I don't know the first thing about being a CPA, but I have one. So I'm probably the ideal person to, well, maybe not the ideal. Maybe I work with larger companies. I'm a solopreneur, so. But I'm clueless about it. I don't know what any of this stuff is. I can't read a P&L. She worries about it. You know what I mean? So when I think over the course of the relationship, there are basically three things that happen. So at the very beginning of the relationship, my CPA helped me set up the business and set up my ledger and all of my QuickBooks stuff. Like I'm the worst with that. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. It was very scary. I felt that if I got it wrong, I was going to regret it for a long time. Very high value. And so there's this arbitrage between my fear level, my recognition of my own incompetence, and the high stakes, what felt like a high stakes situation. And then so it's very high. I'm holding my hand way up in the air. Like, my value, what it's worth to me, was really high. Now, the cost side of the equation, almost any CPA that was halfway decent, this is nothing for them. It's like a no-brainer. It'd be embarrassing. They'd give it to a junior person. Anybody could do it. So the cost is really low to them. Maybe not anybody can do it, but it's certainly very, very easy compared to how hard it is to me. So there's this huge, now I'm holding my other hand down really low. So the cost to the seller is very low. The value to the buyer is very high. The space in between those two numbers, if you apply numbers to them, is where you could set the price anywhere in there. So if the value to me, if I would pay, let's say to me, I'd pay $3,000 to have someone who I trust to set up all of my stuff, pick how I should incorporate, do the research, decide if I should be an S Corp or whatever else, an LLC, set up my books. Maybe I'm going to do my own books, but I just need someone to set them up. Tell me what software to buy. Set it all up. So I know so little about it that I can barely even talk about it, but I'm sure your listeners are like, yeah, that's like super easy, no brainer. I could do it in 2 hours. Maybe they have a template they can just send me that I open, and boom, there's my whole setup done. I mean, maybe it would be worth $3,000 to me to trust that that's all set up right. So for CPA, they might think, I could do that in an hour. I'd do that for $200, $300. So there's a 10x differential between what it would cost them to do, the least amount of money they would accept to do the work, and what it's worth to me. So they could charge me, if they want a no-brainer sale, they could charge me $500 for it, and I'd throw money at them all day long. If they said $2,500 and it's going to take them an hour or two, I don't care if it's going to take them an hour or two. I'm like, yeah, take my money, do it. $2,500, that's $500 cheaper than I would have spent. And that's one example. I've got some other examples that we could probably get to that I'll refer to, but there are different altitudes of engagement when you are working with a client. And this one is sort of the strategic level. It's like a planning, a setup. It's short amount of time. It's a small amount of labor. It mostly is based on your experience, and it can be very high value to the right people. It's so easy for you and very high value to the right people.
Let's come back to the altitude piece later. I want to touch on something that you said in there about the spread between cost and value. When I hear CPAs talking about cost and value and price, it sounds to me like they are conflating all three things.
Yeah.
And they are not one and the same. In fact, there's a long spread in between those things, or at least there can be.
Right.
And I want to talk about what it sounds like in the real world. So I pulled up some random CPA's website just to give us a sense of what it actually sounds like. So let me just read this off this person's website. Our monthly CFO services are valued at between $7,500 and $2,500 on average. This price varies based on the number and types of reports you want prepared, as well as the level of involvement of our CFOs. We don't charge hourly because we believe in value adding and work-based pricing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot in there that's problematic. Why don't you take a crack at that?
Well, first off, it sounds disingenuous. Value is not a feature of the service. It's not a property of a thing. It's a perception in the mind of a potential buyer. So to say it's valued at is a stretch. You could say that on average, the kinds of clients we work with who are very specific would pay us as much as $10,000 a month. But that's a stretch. I don't think that's what's happening here. I think what they're doing there is trying to anchor high and then, come in with a price that's lower than that. It's kind of like setting a retail. If I set a retail price on my book, I'm just anchoring high. It's like I can set the price at zero if I want. It's like a silly thing to say. It boils down to it's simple. It's simple. Value is the most a particular buyer in a particular situation would be willing to pay for a thing. It's the most they'd be willing to pay for a thing. And it changes from person to person. It changes from situation to situation. If you think about like buying a beer at a ball game or buying a beer at the store. Same person, but not willing to pay $8 at the store for one beer, but maybe at a ball game I would. So the value changes all the time. So to put the value in print without even talking to someone is it's a stretch. That's a stretch. The cost, on the other hand, is the least amount of money you would accept to do the thing or to part with the thing. So that's what I was talking about before with when my CPA helped me set up my business. I had a really high value. The most I would pay was, let's just say it was $3,000. That's the value. That's what it's worth to me. And only the buyer can say what the value is. Only the buyer. You're not allowed to tell the buyer what it should be worth to them. That's comical. You can tell them what the price is, and if it's lower than the value, it will be acceptable to them. So the price is that number that's in between ideally, it's in between the cost and the value. That's how you get an acceptable price. So the cost is the least amount you'd accept. The value is the most the particular buyer would pay. And the price, if you want it to be acceptable and you want everybody to be happy, the price needs to be in between those two numbers. And by the way, that's why clients hate hourly billing, because they can make a buying decision, agree to pay, and then the price creeps up and up and up and goes past the value, like you said with the tomatoes.
Yeah. You don't know how much you're paying in advance, which is a terrible way to do business.
It's insane.
My husband got stung by a couple of bees and he passed out and went to the ER. So we were pretty sure that he was allergic. But, somebody recommended that he go to see the allergist. So he went to see the allergist to get tested to see if he was in fact allergic, which, obviously. And one visit to the allergist to test if he was allergic, and we got a bill for $4,000.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
It just strikes me as like, if you want to piss people off, don't tell them how much you're going to charge them and just wait until after you've delivered the service and then send them the bill. I mean, it's like, there's no more guaranteed way to piss people off than to have the price far exceed the value.
Yeah. Go ahead and spring it on them and see what they think. Here's the thing, because people will object to that in this way. They'll say, yeah, but I bill by the hour now, and I hardly ever get your cranky clients. The reason why is because it's a coincidence that the final amount of money that changed hands was less than it was worth to the buyer. It's luck. And maybe you're really good at estimating. So when you give them an estimate, if you even do, it sounds like the allergist didn't, but if you give them an estimate up front and you're good at estimating and you're good at keeping scope creep from happening, then it can work. But in that case, you're just leaving tons of money on the table. Like if you're that good at estimating, you're probably really experienced and you're probably prevented from raising your hourly rate to what it ideally would be. And you get the worst of both worlds.
Or option 2 is that the price was higher than the value and the client paid you, but they were pissed off about the fact that they paid you, but they paid you because they knew it was the right thing to do.
100%. Yeah. And I think everybody's been there. I mean, if you've been in business for a couple of years, you've probably had at least one client that's been like, oof, I really did not think it was going to be this much. And is that good for the relationship? No.
And that is a key piece of it. I'm glad you brought that up. You talk about trust in the relationship, and this creates a fissure in the relationship where your client feels some degree of feeling betrayed. I mean, betrayed is a strong word, but it's not because you necessarily did anything nefarious. It's just because they didn't know or realize that it was going to cost that much. And so now you have a crack, a small one or a large one, in the relationship. And really the problem here is that in the profession, they talk all the time about being a so-called trusted advisor. I mean, you hear it everywhere. You can't swing an umbrella without hearing you have to be a trusted advisor. And hourly billing does nothing to engender trust. And it's just one more reason that the profession needs to move off of hourly billing.
Let me say one thing about that. Trust is a two-way street. And billing by the hour demonstrates that you do not trust the client. You might feel like you trust the client. Well, if you really trust the client, give them a fixed price. Oh no, I'll lose money. I'll go out of business. They'll ask me to do things I didn't expect. Oh, you don't trust them? Like that drives me nuts. So that it's like, oh, I want to be sorry, you touched a hot button. I want to be a trusted advisor because I know that's where all the money is, but I don't want to trust my clients because because the seller is afraid that the buyer is going to abuse their time.
Yeah, they're going to call me every 5 minutes.
Oh, so you don't trust them.
They're going to burn through all my time. I'm never going to be able to get them off the phone. There's no way I would give somebody access to my phone line and just give them permission to call me whenever they want. That would never work. Yeah, I totally get it. That's not a billing problem. That's a client problem.
Totally.
Let's go to how to establish value. Because I think for a lot of people, this is tricky. It's quite squishy, it's undefined, and it's very new. So talk to us about learning how to establish value.
Sure. Quick background though, I only do value pricing for projects. So I don't do value pricing for support and maintenance kind of services, and I don't do value pricing for strategic engagements that are essentially productized service. It's specifically for a project. What do I mean by a project? A project is a collaborative enterprise between you and the client that's designed to achieve a particular aim. It has an outcome. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's not ongoing monthly. That's not a project. That's a subscription. The way that you define the value is by, you meet with the client in a sales interview. This has to be done in real time. It can't be done in any other way, in my opinion, like over email, not when you're starting out. You need to talk to them, and they're going to come to you and they're going to say, hey, we're looking for a CPA for whatever reasons. And they're going to have a bullet points of stuff they want you to do. And you write all that down and you say, great. Okay. So, what are you trying to achieve from this project? Because I could do this 100 ways from Sunday, and I need to make a lot of decisions about what level of quality, where to place effort, how much training needs to be involved, how much onboarding, how much of your time I'm going to need. So what is the larger context? Why do you need to do this? Why do you believe that you need to do this? What will happen if you don't do this? Why do you need to do this now? Why is it so urgent? Let's just put it off. This is going to take up your time. It's going to cost you a lot of money. So why not just not do it? Can't you put it off for 6 months, study the problem, see if it goes away, see if it's really not as urgent as you think it is right now? And then finally, why would you hire someone expensive like me to do this? You can get a a bookkeeper anywhere, or you can get a CPA anywhere. Just go to Fiverr, go to TopTal, or not TopTal, that's a software development thing, but go to I don't know, you tell me. There's probably some marketplace for CPAs. I guarantee you there is.
Yeah. So TopTal or CPA Moms, there are plenty of marketplaces for CPAs.
Like that's the way the whole service industry is going, by the way, but that's a subject for another day probably. So when you understand why they want to do this, and more importantly, you agree that they're right, because they're not the expert, you are. Maybe they don't even need this thing that they think they want. But if you ask these why questions, I have this why conversation, and you get answers to those 3 categories of questions that convince you that it is a good idea for you to work with this client. So they have convinced you that it's a good idea to work together, not you pitching to them like, here's all the whiz bang stuff I'm going to do. It's all about them convincing you that there's a good fit. And if they've done that through this questioning, you're going to know how they know that something's wrong. They're measuring something. They want this project to take place because something is not the way they want it. And if you want to satisfy them, you need to find out what that needle is that they're watching on their dashboard, or whatever the motivation is. You need to find out in advance how to satisfy them. How far do you want to move that needle? How will you know if we hit a home run?